Have you ever had that moment when you thought, "Wow, I don't know if that's what he really said or how that worked," or those moments when someone says something and you're going on, and then someone says something else, you're like, "Man, did I hear him right? Was that the right thing?" And that's where we're at today in our reading. In fact, I'd love to talk about the first one, Jeroboam, Rehoboam, listening to those around you, listening to those that grew up with you, and I think that's the problem, right? Is sometimes we listen to the wrong voices. Pastor Jen did a great job yesterday talking about making sure that we're listening to the right voices, and unfortunately, Solomon's son didn't listen to the right voices. He listened to the people growing up with him instead of listening to the wise men, right? Those with the gray hair that have lived a little bit of life and kind of know what's going to happen. But I want to talk about the next chapter as we think of First Kings. We find ourselves in chapter 13, and there's a story about this prophet, and this prophet's told by God, "Hey, go and don't eat, don't drink, and go and proclaim this message, and then come back." And so he does it. He goes and he proclaims the message. It's a curse, basically, for setting up high places. He goes and tells the curse. The king says, "Hey, hang out with me." And the prophet says, "No, I'm not going to hang out with you. You can read it for yourselves, by the way, First Kings chapter 13. He said, "No, I'm not going to do it because God told me not to eat, not to drink, and come back." So he's on his way back. And there's an old prophet that hears about it and saddles his donkey, goes out to the other prophet and says, "Hey, I'm also a prophet, and I heard from an angel, and the angel says that you need to come with me." And so the prophet, the first prophet, goes and eats and drinks. And as he does that, God speaks to him and says, "Hey, because you didn't listen to me, you didn't obey me, you're going to die." And so on his way home, he's tore apart by a lion. A really interesting story. The lion and the donkey that he's riding just stand over his body. The lion doesn't eat his body, and they come and get it. Here's the moral of the story, right? When you hear from God, when you have a definitive word from God, a definitive knowing this is what I'm supposed to do, God is the only one that can therefore change that word, therefore change that destination. Listen to the words of that prophet. That prophet said, "An angel came to me." He was lying, by the way. "An angel came to me and said, 'Hey, you need to come meet with me.'" Right? That the other prophet, the first prophet, should have said, "No, hold on. Let me pray to God. And until I hear it from God's voice, I am not changing. I'll come back. I'm going to go all the way home and I'll come back. But unless I hear from the Lord again, I am not going to change that which God has called me to do." And guys, can I just tell you, we have to recognize that that's the kind of commitment that we have to have in our world today. There's a lot of people trying to grab these words, grab the Bible, and talk about they have a new revelation. It's been the same way for 2,000 years, New Testament, 2,000 years, Old Testament, 6,000 years. It's been the same way, right? It's been the same stuff, but people all of a sudden have a new revelation. Well, guess what? Unless I hear it from God, I'm not following it. I'm going to grab my Bible, right? But you guys can picture it. If my Bible says this, that's what I'm going to do. That's the revelation of God. I don't need a new revelation from God unless God comes down, right, and speaks to me. And we have to recognize that as we're on our journey, as we're walking, as we're doing what God has called us to do, people are going to come alongside with good intentions. Listen to me, good intentions. They're trying to help us out, right? They're trying to direct us in different ways. But unless God tells me personally, I'm not changing. I'm going to know what God says. I'm going to follow what God says. And even those that say, "Hey, I'm a man of God too, and I have a word of God from God for you," unless God confirms it in me, I'm not going to change. We need to be individuals that aren't moved from one end of the spectrum to another by the weight of storms or the bliss of life when things just go well. God said it. that's where I'm at because I want to be sure that what I'm doing is what God has called me to do.